Hi, everyone. My name is Randall Davis from the English Language Institute at the University of Utah. I'm also the creator of a number of educational websites, including Randall's ESL Cyber Listening Lab. And today, it's a real honor and pleasure to be with you to talk a little bit about, I think, a very relevant topic in the 20 minutes that I have called New Twists, Tricks, and Tools to Enhance Your Online Lessons. And it's a pleasure to be here at this international conference to share these ideas with you. As I thought about the presentation, I decided to expand the ideas a little bit beyond just online classes. This could include online development of content to promote educational programs. It could be promotional videos. It could be whatever you do to up your game. What I also suggest is that you take a minute, pause the video now, and download the PowerPoint for this particular session. I think it can be very useful to follow along. Again, if you have it in hand, you can actually be making reference to the content that I'll be sharing. So I suggest you pause the video, download the PowerPoint, and then watch and refer to that as we go. The other thing is, what I've found is that during this particular pandemic, with the emergency remote learning that we've all had to do, is that it's also created new problems, new situations, new struggles that teachers have been faced with. And one of the things I'd like to address in this presentation, before we stumble into the future, into 2021, what I'd like to do is, number one, introduce some tools and tips of creating a more professional online teaching environment. But also, again, the ideas could relate to creating content for any situation. And then I'll be discussing web conferencing platforms, webcams, microphones, green screens, and so forth. Again, having that PowerPoint presentation and the list of ideas in front of you can be extremely helpful. So let's just jump right into this, the ideas. But also, one other thing I want to keep in mind is, as we do this, I want to really focus on how you can polish your content delivery for more professional looking lessons and set yourself apart from the rest of the crowd. Again, building your brand with different tools that can help you do that. So number one, I want to talk just briefly about realistic goals. And sometimes when we think about technology, we have to make sure that whether the technology we're using is useful or not. And this is an example of a USB microphone. Well, many people might say, what do you do with a USB microphone? And again, you can place your drink inside. It will barely chill it. But anytime we think about technologies, we want to ask ourselves this idea. I think that technologies are becoming inherently more unusable because they're trying to do too much. Just because you can use a webcam, just because you can use Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever, you have to make sure that there's a pedagogical purpose for doing it as well. The other idea I often think about, less is more. This is an example of 12-speed blender. It has all kinds of buttons, grate, purify, puree, blend, shred, and so forth. And sometimes people say, I don't need a blender like that. I need something that just has an on or off switch. Very simple to use. So what I suggest, whatever technology or whatever I'm suggesting today, make sure that you keep in mind that often less is more. Just because you can use a technology doesn't mean it should be used. And don't abandon what is already working for you. For example, a pencil and eraser or a whiteboard. So the ideas of what I'm suggesting is, don't abandon what is already working for you. Just build upon it in different ways. The next idea that I would like to share is a little bit about different platforms that are out there for, providing lessons to students. Again, there's Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Skype, Go Meet, and there are so many of these. And one of the things I just really briefly want to mention, and the ideas that I'm sharing today, are kind of the concept of keeping things simple. So a lot of teachers are using Zoom Basic, which you can have unlimited group meetings under 40 minutes. You have unlimited meetings for one-to-one meetings. And so a lot of teachers gravitate to something like that. Again, if you have a larger group and you go beyond the 40 minutes, you could, take a break and restart things. The other thing is, why would someone want to go with the pro version? I'm not necessarily promoting that per se, but what you do have with like the pro version of Zoom, unlimited recording time on group meetings, cloud recording. So you can actually record that to the cloud so that students can look at it later. And you have the ability to stream to social media, which can be very significant. So again, you have to determine what is going to work for you, what type of platform. The next idea is when we think about online engagement, when we think about students and teachers from around the world. And again, as I'm talking about creating online content, this could be teacher training, training videos, whatever you are creating. This is what I'm focusing on today. And again, the idea of using Zoom is what I use. I use the pro version again because it has the ability to actually stream to like Facebook and YouTube, and it has the ability to publish things to the cloud so that people can look at it later. So no matter what platform you use, one of the ideas that I want to share with you is tips for online classes. And number one, anytime you're creating an online lesson, you want to look at the camera and not the screen. In other words, sometimes we need to be looking right at the student. It feels that we're connecting with the student instead of looking around on your screen and trying to find what you're looking at. That is probably one of the biggest tips, is look at the screen. We have a natural tendency to want to look at the students' faces. But again, by looking at the screen directly, I think we stay more connected. The next idea would be coming up with clear classroom policies and expectations, whether students have their videos turned on and off. And we want to keep in mind that, especially when you're working with an international group, there could be different policies, cultural expectations, and so forth of why people would have their screen turned up, their video camera turned on and off. Keep that in mind. Also, you want to make sure you give your students a real reason for being in your class. And one of the things that I really like about Zoom is polling, the polling feature, which I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Using breakout rooms is an excellent way. And also, the whiteboard, annotation where you can actually write on the screen. The other point is of screen sharing, where you can actually share audio and video from the internet or online. And the last thing is assign a student or teacher perhaps to monitor the chat feature within Zoom or whatever platform so you can be abreast of what is going on. The next thing I'd like to talk a little bit about is, and this is the focus next, is about recording your video content or audio content. And again, we're thinking about microphones, pop screens, smartphones, webcams, lighting, green screens, tripods, teleprompters, and so forth. So again, everything that I'm referencing now, you want to go back to that PowerPoint that I just mentioned a little bit earlier to actually follow along. And one of the things that I'll be doing on that, and again, I know this is very small, but it's really large on that PowerPoint. Every gear, every component that I'm talking about today, you'll be able to find that. So what I want to keep in mind as well is I realize that teachers around the world, and again, this message is going out to teachers no matter where you're from, often are constrained by their financial budgets. How much money do they have to spend? And so one of the things that I want to emphasize is I'm going to be explaining several different types of microphones, tools, and so forth that you can use. Again, the idea is to set yourself apart from the rest of the crowd, to up your game, to make sure that your presentations look as best as possible. But I'm keeping in mind that teachers have limited budgets. So I'm not promoting the highest end, DSLR, cameras that are, cost thousands of dollars. Not at all. I'm thinking of things that you can purchase that would work for you. So let's just jump right into this, and we'll talk a little bit about some of these ideas together. So first of all, what I want to do, and I want to go back to the actual screen here, let's talk just briefly about microphones. Often people think about cameras first, but no matter, even if you have a wonderful camera and your audio is off, People know that. They sense that. They feel that. And so one of the things that I want to talk a little bit about is a couple of types of microphones that can improve your game. First of all, what I often use is what's called the Blue Yeti. And the Blue Yeti is a microphone. And anytime I quote prices, I'm specifically talking about US dollars. And as I'm talking about these different components, I'm not sure if they would be available in your country or not. On the handout that I share with you, I have links to all of these products on Amazon, so you can look there certainly. But the Blue Yeti, I really like this. It's a very high quality microphone. It's USB, and it has different directional pattern recording patterns. In other words, it's great for podcasting, like it has one directional, but it also has a bi-directional mode. In other words, if you're recording with a partner, one of you can be here, the other person can be here, and you can actually record it. And it has a mute button, and it has what do you call a recording gain button that you can increase the sensitivity of the recording. But again, that's a little bit over $100 just for a USB microphone. So the next one that I'm actually using right now is called the FIFINE K678. It is very similar in design. It has one single directional pattern, but the audio quality is really clear, and it's great. And what you can do to add to this is you can actually add a pop filter, something like this. You could put over the top, and it actually will catch any aspirated sounds like P and B and things like that. So again, this is a great microphone to use that could be very useful in your recording. Some of you might say, well, what about, for example, if I'm using this type of microphone and I'm getting way back here, but I need to actually stand up to give some type of presentation, what do I do in that particular case? And so I might suggest what I call it is a lapel microphone right here, and has a really long cord. It's called the Purple Panda. Again, Purple Panda. And that one is excellent because you can actually stand way back. Let's say you have to move, you have to stand back and write things on a whiteboard or something like that. It's an excellent microphone to use. So again, the Blue Yeti, a little bit more expensive. The FIFINE is a great microphone. It's about half as expensive of the Blue Yeti. I think it's about $55. And the actual Purple Panda, it's a great microphone, about $30. But again, if you had to choose between investing in a high quality camera or a microphone, choose the microphone first. That's certainly going to be probably the most important element. So we've talked a little bit about microphone pop screens. Again, as I mentioned, I have this pop filter right here, but also a lot of times people use professionally, designed, created pop screens. Again, that catches the small aspirated sounds like the Peter Piper, Pecta, whatever. But again, you can use some type of pop screen, or you can create your own pop screen, using an embroidery hoop and some old pantyhose. That works just fine as well. The next thing I want to talk a little bit, so we've talked about microphones, pop screens, a little bit about webcams. A lot of people are using their camera right on their phone or on their laptop, but one of the webcams that I use is called the Logitech C920 S. That is again, it's on that description. It's a wonderful webcam. It has very clear picture. It's generally about $65 to $70. Again, there are other webcams that are out there with Logitech and so forth that are a little bit cheaper. But the nice thing I like about this is it has a pretty wide view, and so you're able to actually capture a lot of things. So again, with microphones, I would suggest also a nice webcam to capture great video. The next thing is, so I've talked about microphones, pop screens, and so forth. What I'd like to talk a little bit about lighting. And there's different, as you can see on the screen, that is one of the lights that I use. It's by Neewer. It's a great light, but also some of you might say, well, I'd like to have a little bit different light. And one of the things that I use, and this is actually on the list, It is a Softbox lighting kit. And so right now you can actually, I'm turning on it. I use a remote to actually control it. The warm lighting setting. This is actually a cold light setting. This is a white light setting. And actually you can control the actual lighting. It's a wonderful light. You can see the one behind me as well. Remote control. So that one was about, for the 2 lights, was about $70. Again, you can get one of these for about $40. Again, adding a great lighting can increase, again, the quality of your presentation. Excellent, something to think about. In addition to lighting, one of the things I've talked about is a little bit about green screens. And a lot of people are using green screens in different ways. I'm not going to focus a lot on that today, but you can see behind me, it's a portable green screen. Actually, you can fold it down. You can put it behind you. You can, let's say that, you want to create a different ambiance, a different environment, a different look to your presentations. Again, having a green screen is great. I also, in the PowerPoint, I have a link to how to build your own green screen for very cheap. And so having a green screen can certainly be one idea that you can do to enhance your presentations. So I've talked a little bit about that, and tripods. And one of the things that people, you can see on my screen right there, a tripod. I have it linked in my broadcast by Neewer. It's a portable tripod, costs about $25, I think. But a lot of people say, whoa, I don't have $25. One of the things that you can do is you can actually, when I say here, cup tripod, you can actually like take a paper cup or plastic cup, cut out a little slit at the top and put your phone in. Also, I have these tiny little tripods that you can get on Amazon, or probably in your local, store, photography store. Costs, in this particular case, costs about $2 or $3. Again, where you can put on your smartphone. So there are a lot of different things that you can do for tripods. But again, microphones are probably the biggest key that I'm looking at today. Then teleprompters. One of the things, and again, this is the list, a lot of times teachers are creating online content, but sometimes they're struggling over their words. They're not sure what to say. They want to make sure that if they're creating some content for their classes, they want it very clear. And one of the things that you can use is, and this is a teleprompter for video, it's for iPhone or iPad, but there are many, many teleprompters that you can put actually on your phone, put in and add in the text. And as you're reading the text, as the text scrolls down, you can actually be recording yourself. It is a wonderful app. There are many apps that do it, but again, I suggest this. And I also have, again, linked in the PowerPoint of how to create your own teleprompter for only a few dollars. I took an old binder, I put that together. Again, the video will actually show you how to create with a very simple app and your own teleprompter, and putting like a webcam behind it, I think is an excellent tool to actually create presentations. The last couple of things is editing video. This is a couple of software that you can do to create great video. I'm not going to talk a lot about that, but I'm making reference to that. And the last thing is I want to talk about, and again, as we're talking, different language assessment tools for adding to your content. Many of you have heard of Kahoot. Mentimeter is a great tool to actually do polls. Socrative, again, an excellent tool. And actually in the poll feature of Zoom, this is one of the greatest tools of Zoom. Is sometimes you're giving a lesson, you're not sure if students are following along or not. You can actually create polls in Zoom, prepared, and throughout your lesson to actually measure understanding. You can actually be pushing out little polls into your classroom. Again, excellent. Doing 2 or 3 polls throughout the class to measure understanding is really important. Well, today in this brief presentation, I talked a lot about broadcasting gear. Again, first of all, I talked a little bit about upping your game and making sure that you set realistic goals. Just because you can buy a camera, just because you can do Zoom or whatever, it doesn't mean it should be done. You want to make sure you select software and hardware that meets your goals. And I talked a little bit about, microphones, webcams, pop screens, and so forth, that it can increase the actual visual presentation so that you can set yourself apart from the rest of the crowd. And as you go back to looking at your presentations, and I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, keep in mind the actual delivery into the camera. One of the things that I mentioned again is looking directly in the camera. Even though you want to be looking around your screen, looking at the camera can connect you better with your students, make your presentations more appealing, and so forth. So in conclusion, feel free to take a look at that PowerPoint. Again, you can go to my website. Again, I have a link called Speaking Events where you can find references and PowerPoints to other presentations I've given. But I hope that this will give you some ideas, new tricks and tools and so forth to enhancing your game in your language classrooms or with any content you're creating. Thank you very much for joining this session.